say if I'm researching a topic and I have some research findings and I think they're novel and they're going to add to the field, and I have I have an introduction to the article in terms of, what the current state of knowledge is. You always got to say in your introduction towards the end what your article is adding to the current state of knowledge. Then you go into the methodology of how you did the work, and then you go into your key findings and results, backing it up with some evidence, and then you have primary conclusions. And whenever you're discussing your work, I suppose, you try and put your findings in relation to the current state of knowledge. So you've got to specifically say the novelty around your work, what it's adding to the field of knowledge, and you state all of that in your research article. So when you're writing your research article, that's sort of the typical generic structure. Now, every journal, not every journal, but again, journals have their own different formats, but that's pretty much the structure. So then when you finished your article, it's very important that whoever worked on the work with you, if it was PhD researchers, if it was undergrad students, if it was other staff members, other researchers in general, that if they contributed to the paper intellectually or to the work, that their names go onto the paper as well. And then you have the right affiliation, that it's the affiliation of your college or your research institute goes on. Now, if you're collaborating with someone outside and they contributed, their affiliation, their college's name would have to go onto it as well. So then generally a lot of journals would have a submission process. So essentially you then submit your article generally online most of the time to a particular journal. You then choose, generally you have to, when you do the upload of your research article, you choose some reviewers that could review your work that aren't linked to the work, and the editor that you're submitting, of the journal that you're submitting the work to, will choose reviewers to review your work. Not necessarily the ones you chose, but other people. So then your article is sent off to international peer reviewers in your field. They review your article and they have different choices. They could come back with comments saying, okay, it fits the requirements of the journal, it has novelty, but here are some minor corrections that the researcher would have to do. Or they could reject it, or they could have saying, yes, it's acceptable, but there's major revision needed, and you may have to go back in, say if it's in chemistry, you may have to go back into the lab and do further experiments to get further results. So there's different levels of feedback. So you can have outright rejection, you can have acceptance subject to certain corrections. And once, say if it's the latter, if you then got to address those corrections and you then resubmit your article to the journal, and the reviewers again get to look at it, and if they are happy with it, then they recommend acceptance. And then all of this process takes a certain amount of time depending on the journal. Some journals in some fields actually can take a year or two for this process because it's a different type of process, I suppose, whereas in sort of the STEM areas like, biochemistry, chemistry, depending, from my experience, it can take 3 to 4 months for that, or it can take 6 months. Sometimes reviewers are slow to come back. But typically it's in and around that timeline, and I suppose that's very important because if it takes any longer for it to appear in the actual journal, it could be a year or two and the work could be out of date actually.